Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner who has a product, a service, or a message that you believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind-the-scenes look into the real-world marketing and networking tactics and strategies for getting what you have in front of you to a lot more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and now let's get started. So before we dive into today's podcast, I just want to let you know that I am grateful and honored again to have Spotify as my sponsor for this podcast episode and future episodes. And the big question that people always ask me is, how do you get started with a podcast? Well, what I want to tell you is that there's an all-in-one place that's absolutely free, and it's called Spotify for Podcasters. And here's how it works. And this is exactly how I got started with mine. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer. I started with my phone, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating it right away. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple, everywhere your podcast can be heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take your conversations with your fans to the next level, like I like to, you can do Q&A, you can do polls, and that's the best way to get people talking. And with Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads like this, podcast subscriptions, and so much more. And best of all, it's totally free, no catch. And again, I have now eclipsed 500,000 listens on this podcast. So I want to thank each and every one of you. I could not recommend this anymore. And if you are listening to this and you are ready to start your podcast, start today. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started right away. And I cannot wait to listen to yours. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode. I got another interview lined up for all of you today, and we are going to be talking about, obviously, some important topics, all based around getting the message of what you have out to more people. And the person that I have for you today is the owner of SoundAdvice Strategies, and focusing specifically a lot on helping podcasters get their message out there, broaden their audience so they can impact more people. And again, outside of that, it's also really good to hear the journey of how people got to where they are, from where they started to where they are now. So we're going to dig into all that and more. So Phyllis Nicols, welcome to today's episode.
Well, thank you, Scott. It's nice to be here. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Absolutely. So before we get into SoundAdvice Strategies and everything that you do to support podcasters with their messaging and what they have to offer, let's go back before we go forward. And
Sure.
If you could land on a moment in time where you feel everything shifted, it was kind of like that light bulb moment or that catalytic moment where it kind of shot you into the direction that you're going in now. What was that moment for you?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. So it was probably several years ago. For a long time I was a salesperson, and I worked in corporate sales. And when I left the corporate sales environment, I was doing sales consulting. I was teaching small businesses and their sales teams how to sell better and that sort of thing. And I think the real pivotal moment happened when I was working with somebody that had a small and enthusiastic sales team. And we worked together for a few days, and I went to the owner of the company and I said, your salespeople are great. They're hardworking, they're well-intentioned, they really want to do well. They're here for all of it. And the people aren't the problem, and the training isn't the problem. The message was kind of the problem. They just really didn't understand how to kind of just explain a message in a way that really landed with the people they were looking to serve. And I think that's really when the light bulb went off, because that gentleman that owned that company said, well, gee, could you help us with messaging? And the first time he asked, I said, no, I'm a salesperson. And then the second time he kind of asked, it was like, okay, well, maybe help you with that. So that's really, I think, when kind of a shift happened, it was like, we, yeah, that's it.
So going back to the time that you spent in corporate sales, what do you feel was that the biggest lesson that you learned in that experience that enabled you to become successful at running your own business and helping other people?
A couple of things. One thing, and I think this is will probably not come as a surprise to you, but I really enjoyed sales and selling, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily, but meeting new people and calling people I didn't know and talking to people that I didn't know was really interesting and fascinating for me. So I liked that, and I sort of leaned into it. I think that was really helpful for me. Instead of resisting, I think, just the unknown a little bit. I leaned into it. It was kind of like, well, you know what? I don't know this guy that works at this company that I'm, supposed to be talking to and calling on. So I'm just going to get to know him and figure out how to do that. That's one of the things I feel like you're really good at. And yeah, so that was one of those things. And I at the time I wouldn't have been able to explain to you that's what I was doing. It just sort of came naturally for me. So that was super helpful.
I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the gifts and the talents they have are natural gifts and talents. When you spend, I've been in sales, for the better part of now 26 years. And, more than half my life. I'm 44 now.
Yeah.
So when you, but it's not even so much that I'm great at sales. I really have a joy and a love of connecting with other people. I was
Right.
always a very inquisitive person. Even as a kid, I loved asking questions. But I've always been a good listener too. I've always been very communicative, going back to however young I was. And, all of those things translate into being a good business owner, because you need to listen to people, you need to hear them out. But you also
Yeah.
need to make sure that when someone's coming to you with a problem, that you can hear what they're saying and provide them a solution. The analogy is that we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. So it's listening more and talking less. So
Yeah.
podcasting has become very, very popular. Obviously,
Sure.
this very well. I've had my podcast for almost 5 years now, come up in November, and it's been a very, very amazing experience. How did podcasting come into your world? And for anyone that's listening to this that has thought of having a podcast that doesn't feel they're a good fit to have one, the second part of that question is what's your message to that person?
Sure. So to answer the first part, and Scott, I agree so much with what you just said about like sort of our intuitive talents. Um, that's just, we really can't underestimate that, right? But to the first part, so I was, as I mentioned, doing the sales consulting. So we had transitioned a little bit to helping people with messaging. And one of the clients that we had done some a little bit of work with, just on like some website copy and messaging and that sort of thing, said, I want to start a podcast. And I had just started our own and had kind of figured it out. It was somewhat painful. And this was again in 2017, which in podcast world was kind of a long time ago. The technology's changed. Anyway, so I said, okay, well, we'll help you do that. I'm super proud that particular client is still a client. She's still podcasting and going strong and doing great. And then we had another person that came to us soon after that and said, well, I want to start a podcast too. And I heard you help this other person. And honestly, that's kind of how it happened. We just started talking with people. We had some good results with our first few clients right out of the gate. And that was helpful. And then slowly, we still had copy clients and strategy clients and some other things. And we just kind of slowly, the podcast stuff really just took off for us. So I think, yeah, that's what we answered a need. I feel really fortunate that our clients, especially those first few clients, had a lot of faith and confidence in us and gave us a chance to really grow and do a nice job for them. But also, we learned a lot, right, from helping those first few people get launched, get up and running, get their show going, and that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's how that happened. Um, and you asked about if somebody's listening, I hear this probably probably once a day, sometimes more, right? That either somebody doesn't feel like podcasting, they feel like they've missed the boat. Congratulations, first of all, to you for podcasting for almost 5 years. That's really an accomplishment. That puts you probably in the top 1% of podcasters. I think that's phenomenal. But there are people who feel like, well, I'm not Scott. I didn't start years ago. And so I feel like maybe this has passed me by. I want to encourage those people. I don't think that's true. Partly because the medium continues to grow and sort of change. The way that people consume podcasting is changing a little bit. There's now more and more avenues and methodologies for people to access that content than there ever used to be. So we're just not seeing it in real life practical applications. We're just not seeing that at all. And the second thing I would tell people, the other, I think, thing I hear a lot is, well, there's already a lot of people that talk about my topic or that have similar expertise. And while that's true, for any one of us, really, and I feel like this answer sounds, I feel like people discount this answer. Let me put it that way. I think and I don't want people to discount it. It's like, yeah, there are people who are talking about it, but they're not you. They don't have your perspective. They don't have your life experience. They don't have your, just your particular expertise and spin on things. And I kind of relate this to authors. You're also an author, right? And we have several clients who are authors, who have several books and are writing, working on writing their next book and that sort of thing. And there are way more books than there are podcasts, and nobody's telling authors like, oh, I've already, there's already a lot of books on my topic, or I'm just not, we're just not going to write any more books because there's already so many. I feel kind of the same way about podcasting. There's a place for it. And also for some people, you and I probably come to this a little more easily just because we like listening, we like asking questions, we like meeting new people, we sort of like the process of some of this. If there's somebody who's listening who doesn't like this kind of process, that's okay too. One of the best things about podcasting is that there aren't really any rules. You can have whatever type of show you want. You don't have to interview people if that's not your thing. You can have a short 5-minute podcast where you just share one little tiny tidbit of information, or perhaps you do a series of things where you go through maybe like the 5 key things in your industry that people need to know, or, some things like that. You can just really do it in the way that works for you. And I think should be understated. Like, you can genuinely just do it however you want, and it's going to be right if you're getting the information and the message that your audience needs and wants to hear.
I mean, that's what inspired me to start mine. Nancy and I were driving one day, and Russell Brunson had a podcast at one point, and it was just like 3 or 4 minutes long. And I remember turning to Nancy, I'm like, that's a podcast? Like, it was only a couple minutes. And she said, yeah, that's it all. Robin Sharma, his are like 30 seconds. Like, it's like one small little like tidbit, and then he's done. So that's how I got inspired to do it. But what I'll say to that point is this: for as many podcasts are being created on the daily, there's just as many people that are letting their podcast go. And it's called pod fade because everyone gets excited. I'm not saying that podcasting is a full-time job. It's not. If you have a good system in place, you can run it like a well-oiled machine. It doesn't take up any of your time. It just feeds your business. But again, you have to want to do it. Now it's like, I mean, it's second nature to me. I'm approaching 500 episodes at this point. So it's like second nature. And again, anyone can get to that point. Part of what, people learn in our group mastermind, we teach people how to start, launch, and create their own podcast because it can be done in a very simplistic way. Right. So let's talk about, your business a little bit. SoundAdvice strategies. Obviously, SoundAdvice is something that people are always looking for. How did you come up with the concept for the business, and what was it about podcasters that you lent that heart of service to those people to really support them?
Well, SoundAdvice, we actually, I had a business called SoundAdvice Sales and Marketing when I was doing the sales consulting. And then when we were sort of transitioning, I'm like, that didn't fit anymore. But I love the SoundAdvice, both for the, SoundAdvice, which is helpful, useful information, and then the kind of the play on words with sound and audio. So we kept that. But, we want, I think, the kind of person and the way that we like to approach our business, I think it's just because I saw so many people. I both again in my sales consulting days, and then when I started podcasting and started doing some of these other things, I was part of some professional organizations and groups, and so many people, women in particular, but not all women, were really struggling to just get their message out there, and not just people that were really confident and competent and capable and all of those good things, and they had such great information to share, and they just really struggled with how to do it. And I just felt like podcasting just made so much sense for people like that, right? You can do it in your own time. It's to your point, right? People can set up a process that works for them. You can sit down, some of our people, sit down one afternoon a couple of times a month and record, a couple of, 4 to 6 weeks of content really quickly, fairly straightforward. We have people that do a variety of things. And I think that flexibility is helpful. One of the other things I know is that when there's something powerful, I think, about using our voice, our literal voice, right? Like when you and I talk, or I talk with somebody that I've just met for the first time, there's just a really cool, connection, right? That we get. I connect a lot online, just like you do with LinkedIn and a variety of other tools and resources. And I don't want to give those up, but there's a really cool thing that happens when we're hearing and listening. We can understand the tone and the energy and all of those things. And that's another reason why I just really feel passionate about this, and encouraging, again, some people I think that are never going to do video. They're never going to do some of these other things. They just don't feel comfortable in those kinds of mediums. But podcasting, most of us, when we're talking about things that we know a lot about, we're really passionate about, that comes through, even if we're not the most polished or well-spoken speaker in the world. And our audience, I think, really can take it in and sort of absorb not just the message itself, but the energy of the message too.
No, I totally agree, because, the magic is in the message. So you start really attracting certain people, to what you're doing and how you're doing it by that organic message that you have.
Right.
So where do you see the podcasting world going? Obviously, there's ebbs and flows. There's a lot of people that jump onto it. There's times where it's pretty quiet. There's not a lot, going on with it. Where do you see the podcasting world going in the next 2 to 3 years? And, for the business owner that doesn't have a podcast, how impactful could it be for their business to help grow and scale it?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I mean, I think podcasting is going to continue to grow. I do think that over the next few years, we may see the way that people consume some of the content change a little bit differently. But the audiences continue to get bigger and bigger and more mainstream. So I think if somebody's listening and they feel like, oh, again, the podcast has passed them by, or it's too late for them to start, I just don't think that's true. The other thing I think we see happening are people really understanding we use the introduction of AI, but there's lots of other forces that impact this too, right? I feel like there's the value of creating a real true connection and also providing access is going to go up and up and up. I think. I feel like it's going to become, there's a ton of great content and good content. There's always going to be a place for it, no matter what the medium. But I think for a business case right now, the basics of who you are and what you do and who you serve, that's the minimum. People expect that. They're going to find that on your website. They're going to find that in a variety of places. And it's great. You have to have that stuff there. But then I think the power of podcasting and in some other forms, and even video content as well, obviously allows, again, for people to truly feel like they make a connection with you, and it gives them some access, and it provides, I think, a level of credibility, especially with AI content coming. So it's so powerful at this point, or kind of really I mean, I'm starting to get emails from people going like, I wrote this email myself. This is not an AI powered email. I'm starting to see that on other content, like this was recorded by me. I didn't, this isn't an AI thing. So I think we're going to see more of that. And I think that means more than ever in the business world, people are going to be looking for, I hate to use the word authenticity, it gets overused, but it's legit. And I think that's where it's going to come into play. I think if you were the owner, even of a very large business, it might not be your clients you need to do this for. It might be internal stakeholders and people on your team. If you work in a super large company, you don't know who the CEO is. You don't know who the C-level people are. I mean, you might know them by name, but you don't know who they are, what they stand for. I think that's really powerful. One other thing I'll share, I believe it was Edison Insights, I believe, that does a lot of statistics and tracks a lot of metrics in podcast world, found that 60% of people are looking for sort of that next level of expertise. They're looking for people that share their values, that share, like, so even in a large B2B environment, like businesses want to do business with people and other companies who share kind of common, like, values is really the best word, right? So that's another thing I think that comes across really well in podcasting. A mission statement on your website is cool, but if you as a CEO or even a C-level or a mid-manager level person at a large company, to really talk about how your company lives those values and how you actually, treat your people and all those kinds of things, I think it's super powerful. And I think a lot of people could be missing the boat. One other thing I will share too is, right now the job market in some sectors especially is really tight. Finding good, valuable, skilled employees in some areas is really difficult. And I think something like a podcast where you have the ownership and the leadership of a company really talking about how they value employees, sharing stories, having employees tell their own story, is super powerful. I know one company who's doing that now, and they're seeing a lot of interest. Like, people are actually saying, hey, that's the kind of company I want to work for. That's the kind of leadership I'm looking for. Those are the kinds of people I feel like I could, do my best work at, and they could mentor me and give me opportunities. So, yeah, I just feel like there's so many opportunities to just make that real connection, for lack of a better word. I know that's overused, but that's really what it is at the end of the day.
I love that. Now, if someone listening to this podcast is interested in hearing more about you and what you do, how you serve people, what's the best way for people to find out more about Phyllis and obviously the ways that you help individuals that have podcast or business?
Sure, thanks, Scott. So the best way to really is to go to soundadvicestrategies.com/resources. If you want, we have a short little free audio. It's an audio series, but we sort of break down for people how we help our clients especially in the business space, how we help them get results. You can get that content, and it takes you about 20 minutes or so. And there's lots of other good information on the website about how we do that as well. But the resources tab is going to be a great place to start. And we'd be happy to help anybody, answer any questions. There's a contact form there if you want to reach out with something specific.
Awesome. And for anybody listening, the information that Phyllis just shared obviously will be in the show notes, in the email, and in the description of this episode. So you're not going to have to travel too far. So Phyllis, final question before we sign off today. What does success truly mean to you?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I love that you ask it. For me, I think it's actually doing work that I love and being able to really enjoy what I do, right? I get to do things I like to do every day with people I think are really smart and interesting. And that's really successful for me. That's really everything I'm looking for. It's amazing.
Love that. And I could not agree more. And, Phyllis, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. Just appreciate you, your wisdom, your advice, and everything that you shared. So thank you again so much for being here today.
Oh, well, thanks, Scott. It's an honor to be here. You're so great to have me.
Thank you. And again, anyone that's listening, remember all the information about Phyllis and how she can serve you will be in the show notes, the email, and the description of this episode. So everyone, please enjoy the rest of your days, and I'll talk to you next time. thank you so much again for checking out today's episode. And if you are listening through iTunes, Spotify, wherever you are, please leave me a rating and review. Let me know what you loved, what you would like to see improved, or ideas you have for future episodes. And if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, don't hesitate to go to my website, www.scottaaron.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me, where I can learn more about you, your business, what you're struggling with, and how we can work together. And don't forget to check out my wife, Nancy, and mine, our free community on Facebook called LinkedIn Leads for Life. We would love to see you in there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you everyone for your support. Grateful for each and every one of you.